Senator from West Virginia.
Madam President, let me first of all say thank you to my dear friend, Senator Cansey from Pennsylvania. If you don't come from a coal mining region or coal mining state, and you don't understand the culture of coal mining and the people that do this to work, the families that support them, then it'd be hard for us to explain it to you. But we're going to try to give you a picture of the most patriotic people in America. And by what I say by that, they've done the heavy lifting. They've done everything that's been asked of them by this country to basically make us the greatest country on earth. The superpower of the world, if you will, has been done because of the energy that we've had domestically in our backyard and the people that are willing to harvest that for us. So when you look at this country and then you look at how we're treating the people that have done the job in the heavy lifting for over 100 years, the coal miners in West Virginia feel this way. They feel like the returning veterans from Vietnam, the returning servicemen that came from Vietnam, a war that was not appreciated, soldiers that were treated less than honorable for doing the job that they did in serving their country. And now they want to be cast aside. And it's just unfair, totally unfair. This industry was so dependent upon that in 1947, which will be 70 years tomorrow, 70 years ago, President Harry S. Truman and John L. Lewis, the head of United Mine Workers, and back then in the 40s, about anybody who mined coal was a member of the United Mine Workers of America. So it was all unionized. They made a commitment and a promise that they would get their benefits, would be their health care, and they would get their pensions, which were so meager, just to keep working to keep the country energized after World War II. If they would have shut down and gone on strike, then the country would have fallen on extremely hard times coming off of World War II. So that's how important it is. It's the only agreement where you have an executive order by the president committing the United States of America to keep its promise to our coal miners who did the job and made our country who we are today. And now here we are about ready to default on that. And we can't get people to move on it for whatever reason. The miners are facing multiple pressures, Madam President, on their health care, pension, and benefits as a result of the financial crisis and corporate bankruptcies, not of something that they've mismanaged themselves. If you heard Senator Casey talking about, in the 1974 pension plan was 94% funded, which is extremely healthy and solvent, up through 2008 when the financial collapse. It was not their fault, but now they're thrown in disarray. Most of the people that are still collecting these pensions are widows. A lot of the husbands have died from black lung. And these people are depending on a very meager amount to support any type of a quality of life. And all we're asking for, we had to pay for also. We've had to pay for. We're talking about the excess AML money that basically could take care of this. And also, there's another pay for. There's a $5 billion fine that Goldman Sachs paid for their financial shenanigans during this financial collapse that they've paid to DOJ that could go to pay for this. And they're the ones, I mean, it's Wall Street that caused the problem. It wasn't the miners, basically the miners' pension fund or the plan that was being managed at all. When you couple this with the fact that 60% of the beneficiaries are orphan retirees, I think that's been explained to you. We have 10,000 active workers for 120,000 retirees, which has placed the plan on the road to insolvency. I think everyone understands that. The Miners Protection Act is not only important to all miners in all states, and my good friend here, Senator Warner from Virginia, he has a tremendous amount of a mining community in Southwest Virginia, along with ours, our entire state. Pennsylvania, the home of the anthracite coal, and the coal industry really got started there. We have Senator Brown in Southeast Ohio, which butts up to West Virginia, is a major mining area. It's important to my state and all the other states that have retired union miners. And people are saying, what about the non-union? I'm as concerned about the non-union miners, and I will do everything and commit myself to helping them also. But if we can't even keep our commitment to the United Mine Workers of America that was basically signed by President Harry S. Truman in 1947, we're not sincere or intent on helping anybody. This is something that must be done and must be done immediately And I've said that, and I've been preaching this, and I hope that we all come to our senses and do something as quickly as possible about this. Their retirees, as far as basically their medical runs out the end of this year. The following year, they lose their pensions too. That's how desperate this is and what we're dealing with. To address the issues, the Miners Protection Act would simply do this. It amends the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act to transfer excess funds of the amounts needed to meet existing obligation under the Abandoned Mine Land Fund to the UMWA 1974 pension plan to prevent its insolvency. Second, make certain retirees who lose health care benefits following the bankruptcy or insolvency of his or her employer eligible for the 1993 benefit plan. These assets, the Voluntary Employee Benefits Association, created following the Patriot Coal bankruptcy. If you don't know about the Patriot Coal bankruptcy, I will give you a minute or two on this one. Patriot Coal bankruptcy, Patriot Coal came out of Peabody. Peabody spun Patriot off, and they put all of their liabilities, basically doomed to fail, in Patriot. And they threw all of the union workers into this liability, and guess what? It went bankrupt. It went bankrupt. It was designed to go bankrupt so they could shed all their liabilities. It's our responsibility to keep the promise to our miners who have answered the call whenever their country needed them. They have never failed us. When our country went to war, these miners powered us to prosperity. A lot of the young people that we have here today don't understand that basically coal mining was so important to this country that when we declared war in World War II, if you were a coal miner, it was more important for you to stay to mine the coal to power the country that made the coal, that made the steel, that built the guns and ships, than it was to go on the front lines and fight. They were on the front lines every day. They've never left the front lines. When our economy was stagnant, the miners fueled its growth and expansion. And after the war, there was so much buildup that the economy started dipping. You had to continue to work and produce in order to make that happen. You needed energy to do that. The coal miners did that. They kept their promise to us, Madam President, and now it is time for us to keep our promise to them. We need to honor the commitment. We need to honor the executive order signed by the United States of America to make sure they get their pension and make sure they get their health care. Senator Casey and I introduced the Robert C. Byrd Mine Safety Protection Act to, among other things, make it a felony for mine operators to knowingly violate safety standards. 6 years and 1 day after 29 brave miners were tragically killed at the Upper Big Branch Mine in West Virginia, former Massey Energy CEO Don Blankenship went to jail for 1 year in prison. The maximum was allowed by the sentencing for willfully conspiring to violate mine safety standards. Put simply, Madam President, the penalty does not fit the crime that was committed there. We aim to change that. I stood with the families of the beloved miners in the days following the devastating tragedy at Upper Big Branch. Through moments of hope and despair, I witnessed again and again the unbreakable bonds of family that are strong or stronger than anything I've ever seen. While no sentence or amount of jail time will ever heal the hearts of the families who have been forever devastated, I believe that we have a responsibility to do everything that we can in Congress to ensure that a tragedy like this never, ever happens again. I want to thank Senator Casey. I want to thank Senator Brown. I want to thank Senator Warner. I want to thank Senator Wyden and all of my colleagues for putting these miners first, keeping the promise that we made to them. It's vitally important that we hold the executives who are willing to put health and lives of our workers at risk and accountable for their actions. We must hold everybody responsible. We must hold ourselves responsible first to do the right thing. That's what we're standing here talking about today. If we don't stand up for the people that basically have stood up and defended us, stood up and powered a nation, did the heavy lifting, and we can't keep the promise that was made 70 years ago, then God help us in the United States Senate and the United States Congress. So with that, Madam President, I hope that we do step and do the right thing. I would ask all of my colleagues, this is not a partisan issue. This is truly bipartisan. This is truly bipartisan, that these people work for all of us, not just for part of us. So with that, I would yield the floor, Madam President.